Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 121 of Mastery Modern Selling. I am one of the three hosts. Yes, there are three of us, but it's only me today. I'm Brandon Lee. I am the founder of Fist Bump, and Fist Bump is the sponsor of our show, too. So if you ever, you need help with, hey, there's Carson.
Hey,
Carson,
Carson.
welcome to the
Yes,
show.
Brandon.
So we'll get into that in a second. Hey, it's one of those days everybody's freezing their butts off. So hopefully we got people sitting. Like I'm upstairs at home. I decided to work from home today. Our daughter didn't go to school the last 3 days, but my office is in the basement, and it's just too cold.
Yeah,
Even running the heater 24 hours, it's too cold.
I'm
I think.
way over it. So let's warm it up with blowing some hot air and heating up our sails.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Well, hey, everybody, I'm excited about today's episode because Chris has been walking with us. We've been walking with him for the past year plus, and I want to explain this about the power of social media, the power of shows, and this term that we use. It's called dark social. Now, I don't want anyone to freak out because it's not the dark web.
Sounds evil.
It does sound evil. It's a horrible word, but a great definition. And what dark social is that there's all these social activities that take place that help create demand or create interest, create introductions, and it can lead to real revenue. The question a lot of times is with attribution, a lot of times marketing teams aren't looking for this type of attribution. It's real easy to say, oh, we got this from Google because you can document it. But sometimes somebody's on a show, you hear them, you learn about them, and then a few weeks later you go, oh, what was that company name? And you go do a Google search, and then you find the company, but it didn't start from the Google search. It started from something else. And Chris, that's the way we met because we had Larry Levine as a guest on our show, and you were following Larry or a part of his one of his cohorts, our coaching community. And so when we promoted that Larry was going to be on our show, you discovered it. You came to our show. You watched Larry's episode. You started following us. You and I've connected. We're now doing shows together. You have your own live show and podcast. And you, as the title said, you went from lurker to expert. We're going to talk a little bit about that today.
Indeed I have. This is awesome to be on the show. I have indeed been listening pretty much every week. I love the podcast. I turn it on during my commute or during my my dog hikes in the morning and take it in. And I think I've caught everything from like episode 45 on. I think I even went back and did a couple of deep dives into the early stuff when
Don't do that.
I was like, ooh. Yeah, there's a lot of learning. The learning curve has really accelerated considerably since then. So like focus on the new stuff.
Cool. Well, welcome everybody. Sarah's over here and Brendan and Bob, of course. Aloha, Bob. Welcome everybody.
My man Brendan calling in from Asheville, North Carolina. Also cold there.
Yes. Well, I mean, we should probably just throw all of our temperatures in there. I was, with our team in Cairo, I was telling, was it yesterday? No, I think it was Monday morning. I got up and our wind chill had us at negative 14.5 Celsius. It was 6 degrees with our wind chill in Atlanta. And Carson,
you guys are not built for that.
No, but I think you guys are both way worse than we are.
Now, today it's actually creeping into the 30s. It's been in the single digits and negative with wind chill, but like this week we're really rooting to get up to 40. So
there you go.
Yeah, I'm over it. I'm trying to convince my wife to move to Florida. So
picnic time.
Well, they did have snow in Florida coast yesterday and last night.
I heard in the Panhandle. I'm sitting I got 17 right now this morning on the dog walk. It was 4, feels like negative 6, but the wind was minimal. So Barton is well furified, and I have a lot of layers to put on. So
good
35-minute walk and only like 30 minutes to get ready.
Nice. Well, Chris, 30 minutes put on all the layers. And I want you to, we're going to talk a little bit about Barton the dog, and that is being part of your humanity today. But you are the Vice President of Sales and Business Development at Blue Hive Exhibits.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about what exactly that means. What do you do on a day-to-day basis? Tell us a little bit about Blue Hive. And then let's just jump right into your LinkedIn journey and from Lurker to the expert that you are now, or at least the budding expert. I know
The
you wouldn't
budding
call
expert.
yourself an expert, but you're
We're all
doing great
learning.
stuff.
We're all
That's
learning.
right.
Absolutely.
And
I
hey,
learned
Bill
from you guys.
McCormick, I want to say hey to Bill.
Yeah, we got a good crew
Oh
filling
gosh,
up here.
Bill.
Randall,
Negative
Mira,
14.
Butch. We got a great crew today. Chris, you're really bringing folks out.
Yeah. I have a huge following.
I
Thanks
think
so much
Mira
for
gets. Oh, sorry. I think Mira
that's
gets the welcome from the longest distance coming in from Lebanon.
Indeed.
Welcome,
absolutely.
Mira. Yeah.
Thanks for having me. First of all, it's a treat. I've been listening to you guys as mentioned for a solid year. Sorry Tom's not here because it would be nice to say hello. But Carson, nice to finally meet you.
Likewise,
almost in person. I've been with Blue Hive Exhibits for almost 20 years, which is a weird thing these days. People kind of tend to hop around a lot, but I like where I'm at. So I've been doing the thing for a while. 10 years prior to that in the same industry, almost 20 here at Blue Hive in this trade show exhibit world. I started out as an individual contributor. So for, my first 25 years of my career, I was kind of doing my thing and only really worried about me and going out and finding opportunities and so forth. I've grown a pretty good organic business over the years, built a good Rolodex, and had a lot of good success with the help of a lot of good companies behind me and so forth. Coming back from the pandemic, I don't know if you guys may recall, there was this shit show called COVID, and it shut down the event world like 100%. It shuttered the entire event world. So there was a lot of unknowns. My wife being the pragmatic one in the family, she's like, your industry's gone. You need to go find a different job because who knows when it's coming back. Long story short, it came back pretty quick once the goal line stopped moving, and we could finally put some things on the calendar. I came off a furlough in March of 2021, and we had our first event, I think, in April or May. But when I came back with a slightly different role, kind of wearing two hats: player, coach, model, leading the sales team, but also still carrying a book of business as an individual contributor.
That's the most fun anyway.
Absolutely. Mike Weinberg would absolutely tell you that that's a no-no and it doesn't work. And I don't disagree. It's really difficult because the jobs are very vastly different from each other. But we're a small company. We're kind of doing what it takes to make it happen. And I have a pretty good book of business, and me turning it over to other people at this point just doesn't make sense currently. So big picture, we'll figure it out. But hey, everything's a work in progress. I started kind of doing a bit more of a deep dive into LinkedIn during COVID because there was kind of nothing else to do that could move the needle or at least make me feel like I was doing something productive.
Play on LinkedIn and watch The Last Dance. I mean, those were the only things I did during COVID.
There's a lot of Netflix streaming and stuff. Yeah.
So, Chris, talk a little bit, because I know there's still a lot of people. I mean, we just did an episode. Gosh, was that last week? We did Level Up LinkedIn 2 weeks ago. Last week, gosh, I can't even remember. But we did it on Level Up LinkedIn in 2025 quickly, because we have been inundated with lots of conversations. It used to be sales producers that were like, hey, I need to figure out LinkedIn. And now it's like sales leaders and CEOs that are like, we've got to figure this out fast. Like they're finally like, hey, all the cold outreach that we kept saying, just do more. It's not producing more. We need to do this. So I'd love for you to take us back. Like when you first jumped in, thanks, Randall, last week. My gosh, it must be the cold. Take us back to when you started. What were you thinking that you were going to accomplish, or what were you trying to accomplish, and what did you do when you first got started?
So I was on since fairly early. I don't know, 15, 14, whatever it was, but I didn't really do much with it. And then we hit, the kind of the COVID shutdown, and I was like, okay, so how can I at least be productive? And I was like, let me use LinkedIn to kind of continue to build my network. And it was a bit of a sharing of the misery. Like I was started out, so I'm in the Boston area. I started reaching out to people in Boston, Mass area, then New England, New York, reached down to New York, like, hey, I'm in the events industry too. What are you doing? Right. And it was funny, not funny, because there was a lot of, a lot of concern of what we were all going
Misery
to
loves
do.
company.
Yeah. Misery loves company. So I started building, more so my network through that, connected with a lot of, folks in the event industry. And then just kind of kept growing. I was kind of leaning into the whole like Throwback Thursday. I could take pictures of projects that we had done. Hey, we're not having shows right now, but here's some cool stuff that we did back in 18 or 19 or whatever it was. I had a pretty good array of pictures, and I started kind of building up a followership because I was sharing a combination of, work stuff like that. And on our end, like a lot of times people say, well, are you related to a particular show, or do you only focus on a particular industry? The reality is that we work for the exhibitors themselves. We help, design, build, manage programs and so forth. We are industry agnostic, although we certainly are strong in certain areas that just make sense based on location and whatnot. But we work with, all sorts of different types of exhibitors.
So, Chris, in those early days for you, and during COVID, and you're starting to post, you said Throwback Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
What were you experiencing? Like, what were some of the challenges you faced, or what were some of the successes you had? What was the thinking that was with you had while you're trying to figure this out?
People were hungry for that connection, right? At that point, we were all kind of locked down in our houses, and as much of a disruption as we remember it to be, it was weird and scary times. We were in the early days. You're like, I literally can't talk to people or I'll die. And then it became that clear that wasn't necessarily the case, although a lot of people did, pay the price in a big way, of course. But just connecting, and we kind of laughed about the whole shared misery thing, but it was real, especially for folks who were kind of, up a creek without a paddle in our event industry. So we were connecting with people just on, commonalities, and then started doing a little bit more, just, tinkering around with it. You guys did a show a bunch of months ago with Donald C. Kelly, and he mentioned something that really has stuck with me. And he said one of the biggest misnomers on LinkedIn is that it's a professional network. And it made us think about using LinkedIn in a professional way. Oh, I can't put
And
pictures of
only a professional
only.
way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, I think going up and into that time, LinkedIn was for professional activities only. Like I can't make a joke. I can't put a picture of a piece of pizza or my dog or whatever. Right. And then things started to change a little bit. And one of my earliest memories of somebody that I followed that really kind of moved the needle for me was an agency, like an advertising or marketing agency guy. He lived out in Utah, and he would post, hey, I worked this morning and now we're skiing in the afternoon. And being a skier, I was like, that's freaking cool. Like I dig it. And it really kind of it made me think about LinkedIn differently. So to see people's, to the words that we're using now, to see their humanity and see a different side of them, and understand that, like, yes, it's a professional network. However, we don't have to be stick in the mud, fuddy-duddy, only talk about business all the time, because that's not the way that we work, in the real world.
I love this transformation, Chris, because like you, I had a similar experience coming into the platform. Originally, it was all business all the time. It was kind of a glorified resume. It was like a must have, I suppose, because people would at least check you out before you may go to work for them. Right. But it wasn't where we were, we weren't sharing our authentic selves or giving that glimpse or that window into our lives. And the pandemic really changed it for a lot of reasons. Many of it positive in the way of what you just said, seeking connection. And I think people, you have this ability now to share that glimpse and that window into your life, and ideally start and spark conversations as a result. It became kind of a catalyst for a new type of connection. What I love most about how we all got connected is that it very much speaks to everything that we talk about when it comes to modern selling. You've been doing this for a long time. You've been an individual contributor, you've been a player coach, you've been a business leader, and seeing how we can create relationships in this modern era with technology. What are some of the themes that have really jumped out at you? I mean, what I love too, I mean, you've seen some of our shows over the last year plus. What do you think are some of the most prominent themes that modern sellers should be really paying attention to that maybe you've gravitated toward over the last year plus?
Yeah, no, good questions, and yeah, it certainly is an interesting process. I think just to kind of take a step back before I answer that question is I was following Darren McKee as well, and he kind of showed up on your show as well. So there was just all of these things, kind of like the universe is pointing me in this direction. Like I can't not pay attention to it, right?
Thank so universe.
Absolutely. I think one of the themes is like, in the beginning, it's scary to to put yourself out there, and you can overthink it, and you can write stuff out and then take it down and dissect it and take 5 hours to put a post up, and over a period of time you start to or at least I kind of started looking at it like ready, fire, aim, right? Let's just get it out there. Better to don't let good be the enemy of perfect, type of thing. And let's start putting stuff out there. Some stuff resonates, some stuff doesn't, right? So I think one of the themes is just like, be willing to be open and share, and kind of learn as you go. So that's been something I've kind of leaned into, and I've invested in myself in coaching, whether it be through Brandon, and also I did the program with Darren, and and also I got my start with Bill McCormick. I had him come in and train our team.
That's an A team right there of men.
Oh, absolutely. Listen, and
talk about leveling up.
Well, it's you can fumble around on your own and try to figure it out, or you can lean into people who know what they're doing, right? So
I get it. It's funny. I love that, because I fumbled for a long time, and frankly,
we all have, right?
I used it solely as a tool early on to get connected with executives. So it was helping the sales component, but I wasn't bringing my persona. And, I think when you do that, like, you can use LinkedIn in a variety of different ways. You can use social, you can use tech, you can use AI in a variety of different ways. But if you're only using it to sell or to get a conversation, I feel like you're almost, you're cutting off some of the potential around actually like being your authentic self and earning those meetings, earning that relationship. We've talked on this show a lot too about relationships that were formed. They don't immediately lead to some, monumental deal. It can take time. It takes investment. It takes getting to know these folks. And that's what I think what you've really encapsulated, Chris, is that holistic package.
Yeah, it's a long game play. I'm fortunate that, having been in the business for as long as I have, I've got a pretty good book of business, and that has grown. It's grown even more using LinkedIn in this kind of, let's call it a new way within the last, few years. But I definitely go into it with a long game approach. I don't link in with somebody and then immediately, jump on them and pitch slap them. Yeah, absolutely. It's really just a long-term relationship, building. I think one other thing that I think is really cool is, and this has been a theme that's been reinforced by several people on that you guys have had on the show, is make connections for connection's sake. I don't only accept invitations from people who are your ICP, because you just never know what's going to happen. I've gotten, some really good opportunities because people that I've spoken to who know that I'm the trade show guy now, they're kind of my eyes and ears out there, and they come across an opportunity or they get involved in a conversation that I'm not present with, and they drop my name in, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, you got to talk to Chris Dunn. So you build this army of people who are kind of, advocates on your behalf. So you're expanding, my own, my ability to be in many places at once. It's really kind of cool how that's happened. And the same on the flip side is, I've talked to people. I've been like, okay, so this is great. We're now friends. I may or may not ever have business to do with this person, but then all of a sudden I hear, oh, a friend of mine needs a website built or whatever the case is, and I got a guy, I know somebody. So it's really cool how that's grown.
I'd love to hear too. And Brandon, I want to hit this comment from Anthony in the questions, because I think that's key. Chris, you seem like you're willing to try and grapple with, you know, different elements of social. I'd love to hear like what's worked, maybe what's been a misfire, what would have been some of your big learnings, like going out into the LinkedIn foray. I think it's really important that you mentioned as well the element around like, I've got a guy, because, you know, I know Brandon, you talk about that a lot as far as development of brand, people feeling like they know you, you're a must meet kind of guy. You've created this platform on LinkedIn, and I'd love to hear like, what do you get the most traction from? What traction equals success? Maybe some of the things that you tried that didn't work out exactly the way you wanted, but maybe you tweaked. And then I'd love to kind of segue that into Anthony's question around just challenges that you faced all up. So I'm very curious about your story.
There's a lot of questions in there, Carl.
That was a lot of questions.
I don't know if my little brain can handle all those things.
This is like bread and butter. Like these are the practical application shows, and that's why I like really soak up all these learnings. So yeah, would love to hear like what you've tried, what's worked, what hasn't, and what you've learned.
It definitely has been an evolution, right? Because as the platform changes, then we change with it. You know, one of the things that I started, I feel like I got a little bit of traction with in the early days. And Brandon mentioned this, and I mentioned when we first started, my dog, his name is Barton, and I hashtagged him Barton the dog. And I would, you know, go on a walk with the dog and take a picture of him and I out, or maybe just him because he's a lot more handsome than I am. And I'd be like, hey, you know, I'm on my dog hike, but I'm thinking about this conversation that I had with a client. And the thought initially was like, everybody likes dogs, or a lot of people like dogs. I'm going to just pull in this piece of my life that I'm a big dog guy. And I do my daily workout routine includes him. I call him my four-legged accountability partner. So, you know, that was something that I was doing a few years back that I think just made me friendly and easy to talk to, and you know, not seeming like I'm just here to, you know, sell stuff. So I think that was a win. Over time, you know, that kind of plays out, and you got to adapt, and you got to kind of, you know, move on. And I listen to a lot of podcasts and read books and stuff, like I think we all do. And you try to take all of these things that are out there and bring them into your head and mush them around and say, all right, so I've got all these ideas that I'm merging together. Like, how do I now make them mine and, you know, put them out there? You know, so the evolution of the process has been continuing to show my humanity, but also bring a little bit more business acumen to the table. I will also admit, and this maybe answers a little bit of what Anthony was saying, because he was kind of looking for some insights into the event world. So I'm fortunate that I work in a line of work that is very visually focused, right? Where we design and build these really cool exhibits that go out to shows. I have the benefit of having, you know, be able to be on site, be in a different place, be in an interesting spot, whether it's traveling different cities or in, you know, different convention centers. But then there's all this eye candy as well, right? Really cool exhibits with awesome giant LED walls and all sorts of, you know, bells and whistles and shiny things in the exhibit hall that I can talk about, whether we built it or if it's just like, hey, we didn't build this, but this is really cool. These guys have done a great job. So I've been able to kind of lean into the visual aspect of it and use photographs and videos, you know, really to my benefit, I think, to help educate and inform, but also to, you know, build my personal brand on the back of that, you know, particular piece as well.
You know, in your industry and what you do, I mean, you get so much opportunity with the travel. Like I always find, and Carson, I don't know about you, but when I take a trip, I do a picture in the airport, plane in the back or airport, and it always gets a lot of engagement. And you got to go, okay, well, why? What's going on here? People are interested. Where are you going? What's going on in the background? You know, it's that type of movement, that type of energy brings interest. And I think, you know, with your dog walk, it brings consistency and it gives a little glimpse into who you are as a human. And I don't think it was just in a post-COVID world. we're social animals. Like that's why reality TV became so popular. They're like train wrecks and we can't take our eyes away from it. Like we're interested in seeing what goes on in people's lives. And it's why I like my rationalization or the realization of why humanity and social was so important is when I just paused and looked and said, like, well, what is the majority of what we do? And I thought of like when I owned my printing company and I bought a bunch of HP presses, and I had this like army of HP people that came into town. And what they want to do, they wanted to take me golfing, they wanted to go to dinner, they wanted to get to know me. And we spent this entire day golfing, eating, drinking, talking. You know how much business we talked about? Like 5% of that maybe
Right.
was business.
Yeah.
It was all about building relationship. And it dawned on me when I thought about that, like we're missing out when we lead with business only. We're not giving the other humans an opportunity to find a way to connect with us. And we've always said it's know, like, and trust. But if you're leading with business only, there's not a whole lot there to connect with, to know, to like, or to trust. It's just business, which is not human.
Yeah, agreed. And that's, we've had several conversations, obviously, and that's never how I built sorry, I built my business on the back of taking people out to lunch and getting together. Being in the Boston area, we had a lot of clients that were fairly close by, and for 10 years, almost every month, if not a couple times a month, I'm going into Boston or I'm going to New York or wherever I'm going, and I'm setting appointments. And I'm hitting 3, 4, 5 different accounts that are all in that area. Let's go to lunch. Let's get drinks after. And there was a social component. And that's kind of the way that I guess, grew up selling and the way that I liked to build relationships. And you're absolutely correct. Like those events built a deeper relationship, but they weren't by any means all business. They were a tiny bit of business, but they were being in the trenches with that person and building that trust. And then they are not leaving you unless you royally screw up. Like they're locked and loaded once you spend that time and build that relationship with them.
Something I'm
Chris,
fascinated by as well, briefly, is, Chris, I'm sure you're probably privy to some folks that you've worked with in the industry that perhaps didn't make the pivots that you've made over the last 5 years out of necessity. You were a chameleon in the business and you adapted and pivoted. You saw the landscape, you saw the new parameters, the new playing field, and you found a way to break through, transcend, to be very successful. Do you see others in the industry that maybe haven't made those pivots and are suffering as a result? And if so, like, I'd love to hear more about, why do you think that is? Why do you think they struggle to latch on to this new way?
I think there's a lot there. There certainly are, some folks who are more comfortable with putting themselves out there. I don't know if it's an introvert versus an extrovert kind of thing. I'm not 100% sure about that.
I'm an introvert, believe it or not. So I think even introverts can have their day on LinkedIn.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, there's a lot of different ways to do sales and do certainly sales in my industry. I work with a very successful, woman here. And she plays the game very differently than I do, but yet she's very successful. So there's no one way to do it. But then I also see other folks, in the industry who are less willing to kind of go there. And I'll quite honestly, I do see them, struggling a little bit. So you gotta kind of get comfortable with being a little uncomfortable, I guess.
Hey, Chris, can you talk about some of the successes you've had? I know we've talked about, you've got a couple of different stories. One of them I really liked is somebody that you sent, I think you sent an email to them, kind of a cold email, and his response was something along the lines of, "Oh yeah, I feel like I already know you because of LinkedIn," and scheduled a call with you.
Yeah, that's happened a number of times. It's really kind of interesting because I think when I started listening to you guys, the whole idea of the know, like, and trust was very much front and center. And very shortly thereafter, it was actually an inbound. It was an outreach to me, coming back to me from a guy who I knew. We were first level connected. But in all honesty, we probably hadn't talked in 10 years or something like that, right? So it was just a guy that I knew, kind of related to the industry, but not so much. And we hop on the phone. He's like, I know you just had an anniversary. I know your kid's graduating from college. I know that you do this. I know about your dog. And it was like he rattled off. He had done a little bit of homework on me, or he'd just been paying attention in that dark, in that dark social way, because I'm like, I had no idea you were there. You were listening. You were engaging. But yet he knew all these things, and he came to the table, and he had an opportunity. It wasn't with his company, but it was with a friend that he had worked with, and was happy to pass our name along, because he's like, I see you out there doing the things, I trust that I can see what you're doing. I trust you guys are doing a great job. And that one in particular hasn't resulted in revenue, but there's several other that have, and they're very similar. It's amazing how, people are out there, and again, maybe not actively engaging, but all of a sudden there's an opportunity. And I'm working with a woman right now. We did a project for them last year. It was over 100,000, bucks, and they're coming back, and they're going to spend more than that this year. But it was exactly the same thing. We hadn't spoken in, I don't know, 6 years. And she's like, hey, I've been watching what you're doing, and I'm in a bit of a pickle. I know you guys can help. So no RFP, no RFP, no, like, it was like, I'm in a pickle. I need help. And I've seen what you're doing. I trust you. Let's go.
You know what I love about this, Chris, is like you're out there living it, doing it, learning it, putting it in play. Are there any things that, like, in the new year with the new tech, with AI, things that you're thinking about incorporating into your strategy, or like, what do you see as kind of your go to market strategy for 2025?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, having kind of, been listening and learning and so forth, I'm leaning into, AI from a research standpoint, very much a student of what you preach there, Carson, with regards to, like, how can I level up? How can I learn about these clients really quick? How can I, up level my conversations with, 5 minutes worth of research instead of an hour's worth of research, to be able to use that to have those intelligent conversations. There was a woman who just reached out the other day, somebody I'd worked with several years ago. She's like, hey, I know we're going to be at the same show together. I went real quick to ChatGPT, put her name and company in there, and was all of a sudden like, oh, I was making assumptions that she was over here, but she's over here doing something very different. And I went back, and I specifically, my reply to her was much different because of that couple of seconds spent doing the research. It was like, I almost made a mistake and said, I know you're still in the aesthetics market, but she moved over. She was a med device, but she was doing something different. So now all of a sudden she's calling on, she's selling into the cardiology marketplace. So I can come to the table and be like, hey, we know that market. We have several clients. We speak that language. So just using it from that standpoint, I will admit that I haven't really leaned into the automation stuff as much. I'm a little apprehensive. I want to make sure that the conversations that I'm having are very authentic and real. So I'm trying to find the happy medium between, reaching enough people and scaling, as well as staying true to myself and the authenticity aspect.
I love that.
Chris, you had shared before in our coaching group, you had talked about some numbers of opportunities and what percentage of your your quota that was. Do you mind? Do you want to share any of that? You don't have to share exact numbers if you don't want, but it was substantial. I thought that's why it was important. It was substantial amount of new opportunities towards your quota came directly through LinkedIn.
Yeah, no, 100%. I'm happy to do that, because I do think it's important. About 20% of my quota, I actually, received or realized in the way of opportunities. And again, not everything has closed, but that's substantial. And listen, we all know that outreach and cold email and calls, and like, it's a very difficult track these days. So I've again, this is what we're here to kind of talk about, but I've totally leaned into the idea of, and I'll steal Brandon's words of, growing revenue through reputation and just putting enough information out there. I like to look at it like I'm building a portfolio of content. And granted, not every post resonates and people don't necessarily go back and see what I did a year ago. But you put the work in, you're there, you're present, you're commenting on a regular basis, whether it be daily or several times a week. But I think people come to expect or look forward to, seeing what you're putting up there and commenting on it. And hopefully, there's information. I tend to try to share a lot of industry tips, behind the scenes stuff of how we build things and how we think about the design process. And that kind of stuff seems to resonate really well with folks. They kind of like to see behind the curtain in this weird little industry of ours. A lot of people have been to trade shows, but not many people know kind of the dirty, back room version of it. They just walk into a trade show and everything looks great. It's like beautiful.
Yeah, you should make that into a show or a reality show there. I'd watch that.
Like there was a reality show that was in our industry at one point, but I don't know.
We'd have to look that
funny.
up. Chris, I'm always thinking about like sharpening the axe. Like what are you doing out there? You mentioned earlier like reading and podcasts and things like that. What else are you kind of absorbing? Who are you following? What are you reading? What podcasts are you listening to sharpen the axe?
Well, I did my my Spotify Wrapped, and you guys came out on top. So heavy listeners. As mentioned, Larry Levine's Selling from the Heart. A big fan of his. There's a guy named Dave Gerhardt, and he's actually grew up in Worcester, but he lives up in Vermont. He was a big Boston tech guy. He runs a community called Exit 5. He's on the B2B marketer side. So what I'm doing is I'm listening in to his weekly podcasts because I want to know what my customers are thinking. I want to know, I sell into the B2B marketplace to marketers, to event managers and so forth. So my goal is to understand their world better. So, it's a combination of trying to take a lot of different things, in doing deep dives, not just on sales in general, but my industry, and then figuring out where are my customers, what are they trying to learn. Having conversations with my customers and understanding their struggles, and the reality of the situation in today's market is a lot about budget's flat, or it's even smaller than it has been, yet the costs are spiraling upward, and the two things are a struggle to kind of get everybody on the same page with that.
Brilliant.
So, Chris, you have recently launched a new live show and podcast.
Yes.
And the little pitch. I've got to get better about doing the fist bump commercial in Mastering Modern Selling, since Fist Bump sponsors it, and I've done horrible with it. But you partnered with us, and our team is managing, producing, and helping promote your show. Tell us a little bit about why you transitioned, other than the fact that I'm always like, hey, our show is like 60% of my new business comes directly from my show.
Yeah.
But other than that, tell us about the why and what are you doing, and tell us a little bit about your show.
Yeah, no, happy to talk through that. I've wanted to do it for a while. In the beginning, I definitely had kind of imposter syndrome. A couple of years ago, a couple of people were like, "You should do a podcast. You'd be good at that." And I'm like, I can't do that. I won't do that. But I kept listening and learning. And last year, 6-8 months ago, I'm like, I think I'm ready. So, quite honestly, reached out to Brandon, and I was like, hey, I hire you as a consultant. I think I can maybe pull this together myself. And we talked, and you coached me up a little bit, and I could never get it off the ground. I couldn't do it on my own. We had some honest conversations about, hey, Chris, you're a upper 50s gentleman of a certain Caucasian blend, and you need a little variety. So I partnered with a woman named Caitlin Carey, and we are doing the show together. She's 20 years my junior, same industry. She's awesome. We've done a lot of work together in the field, and it's been a great combination. So, but even with the two of us, like we were unable to hold each other accountable enough to get everything off the ground. And finally, the stars aligned. You rolled out a great offer. Having the ability to use Fist Bump as our production company and to help promote the show and everything. So went to my leadership and kind of made the pitch. And I was like, listen, this is, I think this can work for us. This is again, it's not going to yield, POs aren't going to fall from the sky immediately. However, this is a long game play. We can educate, we can entertain, we can empower people. We can, build not a brand for myself specifically, but for Blue Hive as a whole. And that was always kind of the underlying goals for having the show. And then, finally pulled the trigger on it back in the fall, got our ducks in a row. It took a little while, but we launched our first show right around the first of the year. I think it was right before New Year's. And we've already done 4. We got 4 in the can. We're my partner Caitlin has just been out straight with international events, so we're looking to move to a true live show scenario in February. But in all honesty, we've been recording and then playing them, rolling them out in a consistent time frame, 12 o'clock on Thursdays in a noontime, and that's the same time slot that we're going to jump into. So it's been a great learning experience. I know that show number 5 is better than show number 1, and it's not as good as show number 15 or 20. So there's a lot of learning. We're maybe a little bit clunky, but I feel like they're very authentic conversations that we were kind of having anyways. We've been bringing in guests, and we do somebody from the industry. And really, it's just kind of this open book conversation of like, where are the pain points in the event world right now? What are people struggling with? What are you working on? What's working? What's not working? And we just kind of have these, 30, 40 minute chit chats, and hopefully we're adding some value.
You know what? I'm gonna ask Alec to go ahead and put Bob's question up there, because that's a great question, especially in all honesty for everybody. This feeds into Fist Bump as well, and what we do and how easy we make it. But Chris, how do you ask that question? How do you balance the show with work? Does the show lock you into a minimum of 60-hour work week? How much time do you spend per week on your show?
A couple hours. Yeah.
Couple.
Maybe.
Yeah. I spend about an hour a week on mine, and maybe an hour and 15.
Well, it's a lot. So that's one of the benefits of doing it live is you're doing it once. What is adding to, I mean, granted, we're brand new at this, so we're kind of, we're green and we're trying to figure it out. And we're, Caitlin and I spend some time, doing a bit of a pre-call with our guest, and we talk about, different talk tracks. Hey, what would be interesting? What do you want to talk about? So then we're mapping out, but with Fist Bump's help, kind of that, what is that question and answer period what might that look like? And then they help us tee it up, and they totally help us promote it. So, when I say a couple of hours, there's a little work on the front end, there's the show itself. And then I'm also, I get everything really kind of teed up and served to me in the way of clips or audio pieces, or transcripts. Everything is delivered from Fist Bump, directly to myself and Caitlin, and then we're able to, put that out. And that was another thing too, is like coming up with all this content all the time can be tricky. Like, how do I take my LinkedIn game to the next level? So that's one thing I meant to mention this earlier, but that's been a thought in my mind. You kind of reinforced that works really well. So kind of leaning into up-leveling, my content output, and using the show as a keystone or a key component of that, right? We're having these great conversations. We're getting these wonderful little snippets about really important things that are happening in our trade show or event industry. And now I can serve those up really easily as little, 1 minute long clips. I get also potential suggestions for how to handle the text. I oftentimes kind of go off script a little bit and do my own. But yeah, a couple hours in. So that's a great question, Bob. It certainly looks like it can take a lot of time, but when you have, help behind the scenes with a group like Fist Bump, it really makes it very, very palatable. My boss was concerned. She's like, I can't have you doing this thing, 10, 15 hours a week. And I was like, yeah, I get it. Like, I don't have that kind of time. So it looks like we're spending more time than we really are because we have so much help.
That's a great little soundbite right there, Brandon.
I do like that one. In fact, well, Chris, have you done what we call a hero episode yet? You haven't done one yet. You're only 5 into it.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll be 5 next week. So we have not done that yet. It's on the calendar though, or it's on the schedule to be doing it.
Are you starting to plan for it? Do you know enough to talk about it a little bit?
I only know enough to make me dangerous.
We'll move on. Well, in another episode, I'll talk about it. Here's the 10-second piece. I mean, a hero episode is an episode that's really geared for us. Last week, the Level Up Your LinkedIn in 2025 was one of my hero episodes. I was taking feedback, a bunch of questions and content that I was getting from people, realizing that our ideal customer profile was asking this question. This was a topic that was important. So we turned it into an episode. We do a different pre-promotion of hero episodes. We do one every 8 weeks. And then we use the content from a hero episode for the next 8 weeks of outreach. And it includes emails that are going out, our email campaigns, our cold email campaigns that are going out. It includes phone call scripts. It includes blog articles, LinkedIn newsletters, our regular newsletter articles. It creates 8 weeks worth of content where everything is focused on a very important topic that we know is important to our ICP. And I couldn't remember if you had gotten to a hero episode yet, and the use of it for 8 weeks after, and all the conversations that it creates when it's used in a strategic outreach playbook. So.
Yeah, no, looking forward to that, and looking forward to again, your team's been great, not just with the production, but also with how do we market it? How do you help me with my go-to-market strategy? How do you take what we're doing and the content that we're producing and use that as a key component in my outreach, in my personal brand building, and the brand building for Blue Hive, because that's the long-term goal, is that this yields fruit over time, and I'm positive it will.
Yeah, Carson, you have a lot of experience with that, bringing in the humanity piece. You've talked about your family, you talk about workouts, you talk about some of your travel and vacations, supplemented, of course, with all the Microsoft and the tech. And then you also have this component of that you give so much into the sales community. How do you take a look at that blend of humanity and business and give back as part of your system of creating content and showing up on LinkedIn?
It's funny. I mean, you made that sound like a lot. And like, I read Bob's question and it sounds like a lot, right? Like, when I think about Chris's response, it's an investment that you're making of time into creating the type of relationships that you want, which is a meaningful, mutually beneficial relationship. When I think about the holistic nature and kind of the totality of everything that you just mentioned, there's multiple dimensions that I think we all have, right? I mean, if you go out and you think about, hey, I need to make a LinkedIn post today. What I love about what Darren McKee talks about as an example is how he spaces out the different types of topics almost by day. He's got a system around that. A big takeaway that I had today, I have a very beautiful Cavalier King Charles Spaniel named Indiana. I need to post pictures of her more often, but in all seriousness, it's trying to show the different dimensions of who you are might spark ideas of the value that you can add for people in different ways. I talked on this show about where I've had target customers that didn't respond when I was trying to, bring, offer up a meeting or, bring maybe a resource to bear. But when I invited them on one of my podcasts, they wanted to come on and talk about culture and talk about leadership. We struck up a rapport and a friendship. It turned into an opportunity and a deal, but that was almost like a byproduct of the relationship, right? We still talk to this day, and I don't even support that customer. I have numerous customers where the relationship might have started on LinkedIn. Deals happened during the time that I supported them. Like, we're still close, we're still friends, we still have dinner, we still talk. And so I think the key element of the value of thinking about yourself as multidimensional is you've got a lot of passion areas. You've got a lot of unique skills and superpowers and experiences that might be relevant to different folks. And something else that Chris said that I think is super, super important is when you think about your ICP, when you think about the people that you want to attract, there's a lot of folks that I might conceivably want to attract. I want to attract people that love the sales game. I want to attract sales leaders. I want to attract executives in the industry verticals that I support. And so studying them, studying what they're talking about and what matters to them might open up some of the other dimensions of you that might add
That's
value.
good, Carson.
And so I think that's the key is when you think about yourself as multidimensional, what are the different dimensions of yourself, the different facets of your personal life, your authentic self, vulnerable moments. I've shared a lot on LinkedIn over the last several months around my biggest failures and my biggest losses. And frankly, those are the ones that open up the floodgates of conversation, because I like to tell people at any given moment, somebody somewhere is grappling with an experience that likely you're either going through or you have gone through, and you can add value in ways that you have no idea if you just think about it. So think about yourself in those multi-dimensions and tap into some of that as you're representing yourself on LinkedIn and developing and creating and nurturing your brand.
I got two questions for both of you on that, and maybe we could do a few quick questions as we wrap up. When you're talking about that multi-dimensional elements of you start, Chris, you've been using the term bringing your humanity to it. We like using that term humanity instead of personal, because you never know where the mind goes. If you say personal, we start thinking like pictures of my food that like, oh, that belongs on Facebook. Don't put that crap on LinkedIn, whatever. But when we're talking about that, how do you determine what type of what content you were willing to bring into LinkedIn, and how did you get over your happy self to be able to get comfortable bringing that stuff into LinkedIn?
I don't know how I got to where I am specifically, but the more you do it, the more your voice kind of just rises up, and it's a feeling. It's like, this is a good share. This resonates. One story that I'll kind of walk you through, which is just really meaningful for me, is went to a New Year's party. There was, I don't know, 20 couples there or something like that. My wife's off with the ladies. They're chit-chatting, and nobody brings up LinkedIn whatsoever. Following day, she says, "This is really weird. I was talking to the ladies, and like 4 of them were like, your husband's LinkedIn game is phenomenal." And specifically, that article or that post that he did about how your son was this ADHD kid and you never thought he was going to go to college, and now he's he's a sophomore and he's on the dean's list, and he's killing it. That really resonated with them. And when my wife Pam told me, I was literally like on the verge of tears, because I very specifically remember sharing that. And my thought behind it was like, I know that there's people, younger parents of younger kids who are struggling with this right now. And it felt right to share it and be like, I'm so freaking proud of my son and what he's doing. Took a very non-traditional path. He's going to be a diesel mechanic and fix heavy equipment. So he identified this path. Awesome. And he did his thing, and now he's so freaking good at it. And I love it. And to think back when we looked at him as a little kid and we were like, oh my God, he can't figure anything out, and he hates school and he can't sit still, and so I just felt like sharing that was good for me, but to know that it resonated with some people out there, that just like made my heart sing. So now knowing that, I'm even more willing to kind of open up. And again, like you said, we don't just go full open Komodo and talk about and do everything, but there's things that are important to us. And Mrs. Wilson said, right, like, if you're thinking it, if you have this question, probably somebody else does as well. So I try to think about that. So and yes. Again, to kind of circle back, I'm not sure how I got there, but I am comfortable with my voice right now and what I share and how I bring it. And again, not everything hits or resonates, but I'm just going to keep kind of doing what feels right to me. And and hopefully it continues to, if one person gets value out of it, then I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. Carson, what about you? How do you make that decision?
It's one of those things, like I view it as kind of like a dipping your toes in the water and like gradually getting more and more comfortable. Very similar to what Chris said. And I think about two kind of seminal moments in my path around sharing and being more open kimono on LinkedIn. And one of them, 15 years ago today, actually was my last day at AT&T. And when I was at AT&T, I thought I peaked in my career. I was getting up every day in front of a couple of hundred salespeople, and I was giving Wolf of Wall Street speeches, PG-13, albeit, but giving great speeches and getting people all riled up to get on a day of pound the phone sales. And I thought I was at the top of my game, right? And lo and behold, I had to completely reinvent myself in tech. But what transpired right after that is I started dabbling with video, and I started putting out sales tips. But I came up in an environment and a culture where you had to be invincible. You had to be bulletproof. You didn't share anything about your personal life, because if you did, your boss was going to use it against you the very next day. I mean, I remember when my first kid was born and I was like pressured. You're not going to take time off, are you? It was a different world. And so I was already comfortable despite being introverted. And I love Anthony's dialogue today in the chat, introvert and extrovert, depending on the moment, you can meet the moment in a different way. And I was already comfortable dabbling with video, but I was pre-programmed to be the machine, to be unemotional, apathetic, confident as all get out, so that people would, quote unquote, believe in me. And it wasn't until years later that I really started to realize that's not what is going to attract the type of attention and relationships that you want. And it took me having to reinvent myself in enterprise sales to realize that, and reinventing myself as a social seller. And it started out, as I mentioned earlier, as just reaching out to executives, getting meetings, going in and doing my thing. But what it became, and the other seminal moment, was when I started to realize, and I thought about this post for a long time, and I finally posted it last year. And it was just this picture of me, like looking in the mirror, like absolutely wiped out in the morning after, getting ready for work, working out, but being exhausted from no sleep because of being up with kids, and, stressed out with all kinds of stuff personally and professionally. Like, this is me. This is the reality. And it's the basis of like my last book, The Show Must Go On. It's, every day we get paid to come in and do a job to the best of our ability, God willing. And it can take its toll, like having to get up and put on this show every day. And I had this feeling that other people were feeling that way based on conversations that I was having. And that was me, as authentic as I can get. Like, sometimes I legit feel like that. And the number of engagements, conversations, relationships as a result of that post just blew me away. And I think that was the key. There was no flying cannonball leap into the deep end of the pool for me. It was kind of a slowly getting more and more into the deep end. But I mean, at this moment, there's really not a lot that I wouldn't share. We've had some family challenges over the last couple of years, and I think in those moments, you can find new people that you can gravitate toward. I've linked up with folks in the last 6 months around, personal challenges that I was having, that they've gone through, and that they've helped me tremendously. And it's really enriching my life. So that has been the investment that I've been willing to make, but also the ROI around that has been exponentially strong. May not have a deal attached to some of those, but my goodness, it's made my life better.
Yeah. And along, Anthony, what Anthony said there is, toxic positivity or rampant positivity doesn't move the needle. It doesn't make you seem like a real person. So when you are vulnerable to an extent, right, and you put that stuff out there, that's when you become relatable.
Yeah, I think that I like that term, toxic positivity, because it's positivity to a point that it's unbelievable, and people are quick to do that when, hey, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. And as Anthony said, you feel like you're being sold a bag of goods, and nobody wants to be sold. It's real easy to run away from that. And I think there's a lot of people that have done the whole, like, hey, I tried LinkedIn and it didn't work. And it's like, let's dissect a little bit about what you were publishing out there, because it was either all business or all positive, and both of those get ignored really, really quickly.
Right.
Yeah.
Or just
So
reposting
Chris,
what your company puts out there and not having a thought of your own.
Yeah, that's being a parrot. So, hey, Chris, as we wrap up, what advice do you have? I think there was another. Sorry, if I missed. I missed who it was. Somebody. Oh, it was a LinkedIn user. That's why I didn't know a name. They said they're going to up their LinkedIn game, improve their social selling skills, and were inspired by his colleague Carson. So somebody from Microsoft there maybe being inspired. Chris, what advice do you have? Somebody sitting there going, "Hey, I want to up my LinkedIn game. I'm nervous." What advice do you have for them?
Yeah, a couple of things, and I think just going to reiterate some of the things that we put out there. So as Carson said, dip your toe in, and just get started. Right? Don't try to be perfect. Put some stuff out there, get some feedback, and retool as you go. Get comfortable with maybe being a little uncomfortable, and know that it's going to stretch in the beginning, but it just gets easier as you go. Last year I went into 2024 and I made a commitment to myself. I said I'm going to post every day. Not every post I put up was great, but it made me be on the lookout all the time for like, oh, that's an interesting take, or that's a really funny picture. I'm going to take that, and at some point I'm going to have something to say about that. So I think if you just kind of lean into the idea that you want to consistently show up, give yourself a goal, 3, 5, every day of the week, whatever those numbers look like to you, just commit to doing it. And then be on the lookout for little things that are interesting. It's almost like, I think, how a comic might look at a situation and just find the mundane things in life and peel them apart a little bit and be like,
I love it.
you know what? Everybody can relate to this because it's real. So just be okay with trying it and then, be consistent and commit to that.
Yeah. Carson, let me jump in before you answer, because I want to play off what he said. Is that starting to think in terms of LinkedIn? If you say that from the outset, people are like, oh my gosh, I'm letting this consume me. It actually becomes fun, right? It becomes part of who you are in a very good way, because it's very social. It's very networking oriented. And if you really believe like, hey, my life is better when I know good people, and my business is better, the more like what's our favorite saying is it's not what you know, it's who you know. It gets fun where you start looking at things and go, oh, that'd be really cool for LinkedIn. And the story that I like telling from last year is when I took a picture. I met somebody, and this was a first for me. Meet people. It used to be like, you want to meet for coffee. I moved to the South, and there was a lot of people going, you want to meet for a cigar. And I had a meeting with somebody who said, hey, you want to meet for a walk? I'm like, okay. But we went for this little trail, and we went walk, and we talked, but there was a sign that scared the crap out of me, honestly. It said caution, snake habitat.
Yeah.
And I went, oh my gosh. And he's like, oh no, I've done this trail for years. You're fine. But I took a picture of it. And then like a few weeks later, I was looking through my pictures for some ideas, and I saw it and I went, oh yes. And I did a post about why it's so hard for salespeople to make conversations from cold outreach. And I used the picture of caution, reptile or snake habitat, and brought those two together. And it becomes fun. And Chris, I think that's what you were saying there. So I just had that encouragement for people. And then when you do it with others, it even becomes more fun. You're shooting pictures to Chris, going, "Hey, I took a picture of this. Not sure what to do with it. What do you think?" And having a group of people that you can have ideas with.
Yeah.
So, but Carson, what about you on that? What's your advice for people as they're trying to level up?
I think it's the sky's the limit, and don't put so much pressure on yourself. It's progress over perfect. I love, Chris, how you focused in on that really well today. It's, just get something out there, tinker. I've changed my strategy many times. I've made a lot of mistakes with social, and I think sometimes you just have to call it like it is. I've missed some people's messages. I get like 1,000 LinkedIn messages a day. And every once in a while, I'll have somebody call me out and say like, hey, you haven't responded to my last message, but you just sent me this promotion for your show or whatever it is. And I'll say like, I humbly apologize. Let's get on a conversation. Let's turn this negative into a positive. Think big picture, take a balcony view, of what do you want to achieve this year? You know, we're in January. I love the clean slate mentality of January. Look at 2025 as a whole. Who are the people that you want to connect with? Whether it's your ICP, it's your target potential customer. Cast a wide net. Be thinking about what might resonate with those folks. Leverage it to go out and create intentional connections. Furthermore, think about the people that you want to learn from, people you want to meet or network with. This could be potential future hiring managers. This could be people that are doing what you want to do or are doing at a high level. I'm always trying to sharpen the axe. I want to meet the best. I just started this series recently on my newsletter, talking to the GOATs, talking to the greatest of all time of salespeople. And I published 3 so far: Gittimer, Blunt, Mike Weinberg. Thinking about like how fortunate I've been to connect with these amazing luminaries of sales, what I've learned from them. Think about like you can leverage these different mediums like video and newsletters and blogs. And there's so many things. There's pieces of content that you can leverage that you can turn into so many different posts or methods of outreach. So think about what all is at your disposal. Think about the people that you want to connect with. Think about the ways that you're up-leveling yourself. But there's so many things you can do, whether it's following different people, whether it's connecting, whether it's groups you can join, videos you can post, podcasts you can do. And you're not going to want to do them all, but try some of them. If you'd have told me 5 years ago that I would be a podcast host, or that I would have a regular newsletter that was going out every day to 10,000 people, I would have thought you were crazy. But my point is that there's so many different things that you can do, that you can explore. And my encouragement is just carve that out. I come up with some of my best LinkedIn post ideas when I'm at the gym in the morning and my head is clear. And Brandon, I'm like you. I'm like scrolling through, like, man, this would be a really cool picture to make a post out of. So I think the key is just do it.
There you go. All right. Well, Chris, thank you so much for sharing your journey and your insights and your challenges and your successes with us. Be sure to give Barton a good boy scratch of the ears for us. He deserves a good boy there.
Absolutely. Indy does as well.
That's right. Yeah, there was Bob did.
Bob asked. So
yeah, you named the dog Indy.
Just so you know, she does have a little fedora.
Of course she does.
And a whip.
But you couldn't name her Marty. You couldn't name her McFly.
Maybe that'll be the next one.
There you go. All right, everybody. Hey, thank you so much for joining us. Everybody on the podcast, thank you so much as well. If you liked what you hear on our show, we appreciate a review and let us know what you like. For everybody out there, LinkedIn or podcast or YouTube or wherever you're listening to us, if you have topics that you'd like us to address, please communicate that with us. You can go to masteringmodernselling.com, which is our website for the podcast, but you can also find links to LinkedIn and YouTube and everywhere else. I think that was it. Carson, you want to wrap us up and send us on out?
I'd love to. And I think this officially just became the 4th longest Mastering Modern Selling ever. So I really enjoyed it, Chris. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for the commenters in the chat. We had great, robust chat today. Thank you all. Hope everybody's having an awesome start to 2025. And until next time, happy modern selling.